So, technically, the thing that got me into more of this vintage vibe was actually this vintage camera, which I actually purchased from a store in Romford, also known as, I got a little like thingy here, but it's kind of like a vintage, Italian vintage style kind of like place where they sell records, they sell record players, they sell cassette players, they sell cameras, and they're all vintage, they're all working, they all have this thing. So if you want to go to Romford and just follow that, you will find a shop in the indoor market where they sell vintage cameras. What I really love about this, you've got like this little light here that says that this little flasher thing is working. But what I really love about this camera is that it came with everything. It comes with this kind of lens thing here. You can actually see through the camera. You can take pictures. It has film. It has 4 AAA batteries already installed inside the camera. And what I really love about it is that it actually looks like a real vintage camera. And I know that, you know, some people who are part of this hipster community would see this and say, oh, that's an ugly duckling kind of looking camera. But knowing that this is a full working Nikon camera, and I know in Australia, like finding a Nikon camera is like $500 just to find a body of this. This is a full working one. It came with like another kind of lens. This is like a Sigma thing. So this is like a leather kind of pouch. And then inside this is the other lens. I'm not really going to put it on the camera because it's just so technical to use this. But I wouldn't say it's technical, it's just a little bit fiddly. But this is like the Sigma lens that you would put on this camera. It's just a longer lens. Pretty good for what you like. The price originally, so there was a sale during that week in that shop, and the camera was originally priced at about £180. And I thought, well, that's steep. But for a vintage camera, I thought, I was umming and ahhing. I didn't really know what to think. So then in the end, I asked the lady, how much is this camera? She says it's 180, but because we've got a sale on, she usually typically does a sale within several weeks. She says, I'll give it to you for about 90 quid. So I put a reserve on it because I was getting paid in the next 3 days. And I got the camera for about 90 quid. So I thought to myself, A, it's a bargain. It's vintage. I wouldn't say it's something that most hipsters will be into. If you are a hipster, most hipsters go for like the kind of camera that's silver and black and it looks iconic and it's one of the classic cameras. This isn't one of the classic cameras, but I thought I want to get into that more analog side of the camera, because if you look on the back of this camera, there's no screen. No screen. Most digital cameras would have a screen, but this camera doesn't have a screen. And what I love about this analog aspect of taking photography is it doesn't take away from the moment. This is what I'm learning about a soul day. A soul day is about enjoying the moments that we have. And one thing I'm learning is that photography is like that. We can capture a shot, but we have to wait until the photo develops in order to see what we've actually taken a picture of. This gives off like grainy photos, so I really like that. Something you can't get in a digital camera. A digital camera will take the picture just like the pictures on your phone. So one way I like about this is that you can take a picture just like I took a picture of this phone, but it will come off in a grainy way, giving that kind of vintage inspired aesthetic that I really do enjoy. Also, when I was a kid, this is what cameras used to look like. When I was like 10 or 11, maybe even a little bit younger than that, this is what cameras used to look like. And I always wish that when I grew up, cameras used to look like this, but now cameras look very different. They look similar to this, but they've got like the digital thing. You can delete the camera footage or something like this. They have SD cards. They're a little bit more complicated now. With this, it takes like normal film. So I really love this aspect. And yeah, it's good for me. I like the black. It gives it kind of that more minimalistic design, that kind of analog feel. And I'm all about that, man. Now, on the basis of the camera, if you're wondering if it actually came with the instruction manual, yes, it did. This is the instruction manual it came with, like the true vintage original one, where it tells you how to use the camera kind of thing, a little bit of the lowdown of how to open it up and stuff like this. It's just, I like that little piece because when I actually got the camera, I decided to read through it. I didn't read a lot through it, but I think when I've given it enough go and start taking my photography a bit seriously, I'll read this whole entire manual, open this up, try and get the cameras developed or some of the imagery developed, and then just do it from there and see how that goes. The next thing I've been trying to do is get away from, like, I like listening to music on my phone, typically. If I'm knitting, I like to listen to my music on my phone. But sometimes what I've been trying to do when I'm knitting at work, or if I'm knitting sometimes in the coffee shop, I like to listen to my music in a more kind of retro vintage way. So when I was in that vintage shop, I actually got this kind of like not record player. I got this cassette player, and this is a CGM stereo kind of like a cassette player. It's not Sony, it's not a Walkman, I can't put it on my belt. It is something that I have to sit down, put the cassette tape in and listen to it. If you move around with it, obviously when it shakes, it's gonna get crackly. So what I love about this is this is the back of it, it's the side, it's very, very retro, and this is actually vintage. I actually looked it up, and they actually say that this is probably like 20, 30, probably 40 years old. Not entirely sure on the dates, but yeah, when I saw this in the shop, I asked them, does this still work? And they put in like a jack. It actually came with some earphones. So these are like the earphones that they gave me. And I thought, okay, this is cool. This is really cool. So this is a cassette tape that works. But in the end, I ended up getting a pair of earphones on eBay for about £3. This is just known as a Stereo Lab kind of thing. And I wanted to get a pair of the stereo kind of CGM kind of like cassette playing, like when you see in the Stranger Things, when she's listening to that cassette tape, obviously I know it's a Walkman, she was wearing stuff like this. It's like this kind of very retro vintage kind of vibe, and I really liked these earphones. I felt like they gave off the aesthetic that you're actually listening to a cassette tape. So obviously you put these on like this, I find it's like a great way of listening to it, but the music is very, very loud. So yeah, this is what I look like with these on, and this is how you're wearing them right, apparently. Another thing is it was also finding that kind of music. Like, obviously, finding cassette tape music that actually works is sometimes very difficult to find. So obviously there they did actually have cassette tapes there, but I actually went on to Etsy and actually found this kind of box, and inside this red box is about 12 vintage 80s music cassette tapes. So these are all the cassette tapes from the 80s. I have listened to most of them now, all 12 of them, and all 12 of them work. So I really like this, and I find that, having something like this, most of these bands I've never heard of before. So, like, I've never heard of, like, Harmonically Yours from the Shakespeare Sisters. Never heard of this track before. Listened to both sides. I really love the idea of how this sounds, because it's high pitch, and, it gets you centered in the moment. Another one that I listened to yesterday when I was at work, I listened to the Attic Sisters. Really love this one. I've also been getting into Irishaw. So Irishaw, never heard of them tracks before. Really enjoyed that. And I've been listening to all of these and found out from a friend of mine that these are actually kind of all music from the 80s. So not only is it vintage music, and I think to myself, we always, like, in the hipster community and the hipster community that we know of, people want to listen to niche music that no one's ever heard before. But have you noticed, when new music comes out, it all of a sudden, the more people who start listening to it, it becomes popular. But I think to myself, how about we start getting into older music, in the sense of, this is 80s music, and I've tried to talk to people, oh, have you ever heard of Euroshaw, or if you ever heard of Harmonically Yours from the Shakespeare Sisters? And they say to me, who's the Shakespeare Sisters? And it's mostly because the people of today, they wouldn't have ever heard of the 80s music. Some people have. People who are millennials, people who are boomers will probably have heard of this. People who might be Gen Z may have heard of this. But most people in today's mainstream, most things that come out brand new, unless this is the music you created yourself, or unless they're really not popular, most people want to make money, and make money off of the things that they love. When people create music, it's always going to get popular, but usually the older music doesn't always get popular. So that's what I really love about this music, is that it is vintage music. Yes, this is probably 40 years aged, but still, I really love coming back to the originals. It comes with a nice box. And listening to it on cassette is one way of being different, where everyone's on their phones, they have their earpods and stuff like this. When you're in a coffee shop and you're knitting, if you're at work and you're listening to this, people who are millennials or people who lived in them times, they can live in nostalgia and see someone who's younger than them listening to the same things that they used to listen to. and they can have a nostalgic moment, remind themselves, and it creates conversation. It gets people away from, I'm using my phone for this, but it gets people away from being on their phone all the time and gets them centered in the moment. One thing I love about cassette tape is that you have to listen to that track all over again. Sure, you can rewind it, but you have to listen to that part of the music all the way through, turn it over all the way through, or rewind it. That's the only option. You can't just press on the button and then go from there. There's no ads on a cassette tape. You're not going to be sold anything unless they actually put that on the cassette tape. So that's one reason why I really love cassette, because it's something that was of the past, it's vintage, and it's something that grounds you to the very moment. Listening cassette is grounding you to the moment, and I love that. And it's the same thing, it's that this analog feel. So yeah, that's what I love about cassette, and that's what I love about vintage cameras, and that's the reason why I'm starting to use them in my soul day, is to get me away from digital places or digital things and abusing our digital life. Instead of using my phone to listen to music, listen to cassette. I still listen to music on my phone when I really want to listen to a certain track. But say if I wanted to listen to I don't know, like Al Green, but I want to listen to music that I've never heard from Al Green before, I can listen to cassette, because it forces you into that mindset of you can't just click on a button and be distracted by something. You have to listen to just that. So it is time consuming, but it really makes you focus on in the moment. And I think that's really important when you focus on something like that.